On June 12, 1940, the armored spearhead of the Kolgas army rolls into northern Abruzia. Two task forces of roughly regimental size slip through the mountain passes in the pre-dawn hours, unmolested by the sleepy border pickets. By noon, the larger of these forces, Task Force Marina, has entered the Barbula Valley, which controls the highway running east past San Diego and south to Valencia. Colonel Edgar Ramirez is in command, leading a combined force of the 1st and 2nd Crown Infantry Battalions, one company of M3 Stuart tanks, one recon platoon attached from 1st Cavalry Squadron, and 3 batteries of 75mm pack howitzers. The ultimate objective of this task force is Valencia. Just after noon, Colonel Ramirez receives reports indicating a large enemy presence to the east in the valley of San Diego. This is concerning. Losing the highway east means the whole advance is canalized down the Barbula Valley. In order to threaten Valencia from 2 directions and secure his left flank, Ramirez attaches the tank and recon elements to 1st Battalion, giving the following order. 1st Battalion reinforced to proceed east into San Diego Valley at speed. Secure bridges east and south of the road junction to support future movement. Battalion is granted A Company 2nd Battalion to act as regimental reserve. For the leader of 1st Battalion, Lieutenant Colonel Rafael Novoa, this will be the first major combat of his career. Lieutenant Colonel Novoa passes orders down the column of trucks idling on the road east. The jeeps of the recon platoon have already crossed the ridgeline, so, in pursuit of a speedy advance, the troops step off in a column of companies, led by A1 Cav, the tanks. As Novoa is shouting orders over the rumbling of the Stuart's radial engines, he hears muffled gunfire from just past the ridge, the first shots of the Battle of San Diego, and, though he doesn't know it yet, the first shots of the war. Captain Daniel Alvarado directs his tanks up to the ridge, and in doing so encounters the remains of the recon platoon, dismounted, scattered, and fleeing west. One sergeant has kept his head and snaps off a report. Enemy infantry, roughly a battalion, in the woods south of the road. Captain Alvarado orders his men to button up, and the tanks rumble to the ridgeline with one company from 1st Battalion in close support. They immediately take fire from trees north of the road. The sharp cracks of bolt actions are mixed with the deeper barks of anti-tank rifles. Alvarado is keenly aware of the Stuart's thin side armor. He leads the tanks north in a cautious shuffle along the ridge, hulls down, fronts to the enemy. They pour machine gun and 37mm fire into the tree line as enemy shells begin to fall around them. A1 Cav and A1 Crown Infantry form a ragged skirmish line on the ridge, pinned down by heavy artillery fire from deeper in the valley. They're soon joined by D Company, the battalion weapons element. Captain Alvarado wastes no time getting the D Company mortars firing on the woods opposite. The infantry spot troops fleeing deeper into the woods, and the enemy fire lulls. A1 Infantry immediately advances up the road, while A1 Cav wheels north around the uphill flank. The tanks are surprised by a volley of accurate anti-tank gunfire, which is determined to be coming from a ruined bunker by the crossroads. At this range, the shells barely dent the Stuart's front sloped armor. More anti-tank rifle fire bursts from the scrub uphill, which the tanks reply to in kind. Back on the road, A1 Infantry is engaged with the last of the enemy screen in a short-range firefight. The Kolgosi Infantry find their opponents to be ill-equipped and undisciplined. Many prisoners are taken. 12:51. Colonel Ramirez is on the battalion radio, demanding to know whether his subordinates understand the meaning of the words "at speed," or if he has to drive up there and remind them. Lieutenant Colonel Novoa hurriedly attaches 2 MG platoons from the weapons company to the newly arrived B Company, then sounds a general advance. A1 to take the south of the road, and B1 reinforced to take the north. Alvarado, incensed by the colonel's tone, leads his company of tanks in a charge toward the hillside brush, scattering the enemy infantry. The battalion mortars pound the crossroads, obscuring the bunker's line of fire with clouds of smoke and dirt. A company of the enemy infantry have rallied around the bunker, firing desperately on the advancing Kolgosi infantry. To the rear, the Kolgosi pack howitzers are finally unlimbered, and so add the weight of their 75mm shells to the chaos of the crossroads. 1300, Lieutenant Colonel Navoa has moved his headquarters up to the ridge and dispatched C Company to sweep the southern woods en route to the town. The lieutenant colonel has a splendid view of the valley and is treated to the sight of his infantry and tanks bursting out of cover in their glorious assault eastward. To his dismay, the Abruzzian artillery opens up with a vengeance. The tanks skid and careen, drivers deafened. The men of A and B companies, caught in the open, are mauled. Enemy small arms fire erupts from the town, halting the southern flank of the advance. As Navoa stares unbelieving through his field glasses, the enemy infantry holding the crossroads abandon their shell scrapes and, anti-tank rifles in hand, charge uphill, firing shot after shot into the flanks of the stricken Stuart Company at point-blank range. It is said that fortune favors the brave, but the suicidal elan of the enemy infantry earns them nothing more than withering machine gun fire from B Company and the full attention of the 75mm howitzers. They are blasted apart, and the Stuarts advance unmolested. As the two Kolgosi companies advance towards the crossroad, A1 Crown Infantry takes heavy fire from the bunker complex and routs. B1 shifts uphill to take cover in the scrub there, while Captain Alvarado's tanks maneuver around behind the bunker. Two Stuart platoons focus on silencing the crossroad guns as the third races for the eastern bridge. On arriving at the bridge, the tanks flush a group of local partisans from underneath the structure, scattering them with machine gun fire. Within minutes, the bridge to the east is secure, and the battalion CO is notified. With the crossroads position reduced, Lieutenant Colonel Navoa reorients the offensive southward. Since C Company is still pinned down by small arms fire, at 1345, Navoa releases A Company, 2nd Battalion, from the regimental reserve and directs them to reinforce C Company's advance. In support, forward observers on the ridgeline direct a thunderous spread of howitzer and mortar fire into the occupied buildings at the edge of town. Through his field glasses, Navoa watches the Abruzzian infantry abandon their posts. He nervously checks his watch as the first elements of B Company enter the town. It's been almost 2 hours since the first shots were fired. 2 hours of time that the invasion can scarcely afford to waste. As if to confirm his fears, a series of dull, staccato thumps resonates through the valley. It's a noise Navoa recognizes immediately. He lets out a sigh and watches the clouds of smoke rise from the center of town. The radio crackles with a curt, subdued report from B Company. The bridge is blown. Lieutenant Colonel Navoa has failed, and the fate of the invasion will now be decided in the narrow valley to the west. Thank you all for listening to this first battle report from our Modern Wargames campaign. I know this video has been a long time coming. Hopefully you can see a slight uptick in production quality here. I'd love to know your guys' thoughts between release schedule and video quality, if the extra graphics are worth the wait to you. In the next video, we're going to review this battle from a more objective, third-person, omniscient view. We're going to see where it fits into the overall campaign. We'll pull out the big map again, turn the clock forward a few days, and see how things develop. We'll also, now that we're informed by some actual gameplay experience, look back at those 4 big questions we discussed in the introduction and see what we've learned about running modern map-based wargaming campaigns. Thank you all for watching, and I'll see you next time.